Welcome to Week 7 of the South Carolina Football Preview Show. We're here at the Village Idiot Pizza and Pub, our sponsor at the 5 Points location. Village Idiot also has a location on Forest Drive and Forest Acres. Well, the Gamecocks' first bye week has come and gone.
At a very good time, I might add.
Furman's in town this week. The State Fair's in town this week. That means traffic will be a nightmare on Saturday, much like the last 2 Saturdays the Gamecocks have played football, but for a different reason. Coming off of back-to-back losses against Missouri and Kentucky, back-to-back losses in which they had a 14-point lead or at least a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter. Not great times right now if you're a South Carolina fan. The 2015 schedule was released earlier this week. Lots of folks would rather just go ahead and start thinking about 2015 now. But there are 6 games left in this season. Gamecocks are 3-3, 2-3 in the SEC. The last time we sat here, we were talking about, is this season a bust? Both of us at the time answered emphatically no. David, has your opinion changed?
It's a little has changed, Josh. I mean, in terms of winning the SEC East and all the dreams that went with that, yeah, that's gone.
Right.
I mean, of course, it is still theoretically, mathematically possible, but let's be honest here, folks. South Carolina is not going to Atlanta, so go ahead and make your plans for the women's basketball game at Duke the next day. That'll be a real good game.
Well, that will be a good game.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's going to be nice, but that's December the 7th. But,
okay.
And USC's not going to Atlanta, but that's okay. You know, USC's only gone to Atlanta once in its history, so they're kind of used to not playing on that first weekend in December. But is the season a bust? No, because also by mathematically, Josh, there's 6 games left to play.
Right.
And 7 if you go to a bowl. You win all 7 of those, you're 10-3. And you know, last I checked, double-digit wins at this school are not that rare. So, or not. I'm sorry, not that plentiful.
Right.
So, you know, if they win all 7, I'm not saying they will, but if they win all 7, they can still have a great season. They win 6, they can still have a great season. But obviously, the goals have changed. The goals have changed to what a lot of goals were before Steve Spurrier came, and even in the earlier years of his tenure. Beat Clemson. Get to a bowl game. That's what you want to do. And try to get some of these other wins that you can get, a Tennessee, a Florida, stuff that, you know, really looks good because they're going to be your biggest rivals going down the road.
Right.
And, you know, see if South Carolina can still win 7, 8, 9 games. That would still be a very successful season, judging by the books. It's just when you think in all the factors of this season, all the expectations, yes, it is very disappointing. What are the Gamecocks playing for at this point? Bowl projections say the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, the Belk Bowl up in Charlotte. Honestly, any bowl's a good bowl at this point, except maybe the one in Shreveport. Let's be honest. I'm sorry, not Shreveport, in Birmingham. Let's be honest, nobody wants to go to Birmingham for a bowl game. South Carolina sure doesn't want to go there after the Papa John's Bowl the last time. But if they get to a bowl and maybe get that rivalry win, it's going to be a successful season. So have the players and coaches talked about goals and motivation? Of course they have. They've talked about keeping their heads up. And just from what we've seen in practice, Josh, there's no hanging heads. There's no, well, you know, we're just going to try to just play this out as best we can and then see what we can do next year. There's no talking next year because there's still plenty of this year to play. And the fact is that they can, you know, still win these games. There are 6, 7 chances left to improve. And you got to figure, at least defensively, you can't get any worse. So just try to improve and win as many games as you can. A big topic over the bye week was the players-only meeting that Dylan Thompson, A.J. Cann, a couple of the seniors called. I think this is a good thing that can happen because it gets a different voice on it. It's not just the same coaches saying the same things to you all the time. They're not yelling and screaming, and they're not, you know, patting you on the butt and telling you everything's okay either. It's basically just saying, guys, you know, we haven't played our best. We can play our best, and let's get back out there and try to play our best. We'll see what kind of effect it has. Honestly, I don't know if you'll be able to tell the effect truly until 2 weeks down the road after the Auburn game, but it can't possibly hurt going into this Furman game after a bye week. So, you know, it's been a rough couple of weeks, but hey, it's not something the South Carolina fans aren't used to. So, you know, you might as well come on down to Village Idiot here in 5 Points, have the lunch special, 2 slices and a drink, best pizza in town, best deal in town, and, you know, kind of try to forget your sorrows from the first 6 weeks because there's 6 more games to play. Josh, what do we know about USC going into this game, specifically how Lorenzo Ward is planning to fix this USC defense?
Well, I think right now he's trying everything he's got. I mean, he's emptying the barrel at this point. I don't know. Clearly, there is not an answer.
Right.
If there was an answer, Lorenzo Ward would have found it by now. He's a good football coach. I know a lot of people right now don't feel that way. He knows what he's doing. But so at this point, he's looking for anything. This week, that means he's going to the box. Feels like he can see the game better. Clearly, you can see the game better from up there. What you give up there are some communications with your team.
No one-on-ones with your players.
Right, and traditionally, you would think that with an older team, you'd be willing to give that up. But this is not an older team. This is a young team. So Kirk Botkin, Deke Adams, the guys who stay on the field are going to really have to pick up, I think, the slack there, communicating with that team and giving Lorenzo Ward the pulse of the sideline, because that's what you lose by going to the box. They also say they're going to shorten the rotation. Again, that's probably not something you'll notice this week, because you would hope you get a big rotation against Furman, because you hope you've got a comfortable win. But I think South Carolina's defensively, they're looking for frontline guys who can play. They came into the season thinking we got a bunch of guys who are all about the same. We're going to play them all. We're going to be fresh. We're going to, overwhelm people with a bunch of good players rather than great players. That hadn't worked. So they're going to find the guys who are playing best. If they can't determine them, they're just going to pick somebody, and they're going to roll with those guys. I think that was what you'll see the last 5 games of the regular season. I think this week may be about finding out who those guys are. Offensively, the Gamecocks' offense is running along pretty well. I mean, they haven't gotten the job done in some critical moments in the fourth quarter in the last 2 weeks. But they've got, you feel like they know what they're doing. You feel like
it should have been enough. It should have been enough the past 2 games.
You feel like they've got a handle on things. I think that we will see a backup quarterback this game, not just because it's Furman.
That's the hope, just because it's Ferman, I think. But
I think Spurrier's to the point where he wants to try a guy. He's talking this week about trying a guy in the second quarter just to see what he's got. So I think we'll see some of that early. Gamecock fans will finally get to see, and we'll finally get to see who's the backup quarterback. Is it Connor Mitch or Perry Orth? I still think it's Connor Mitch, but we'll get to see. I thought this week during the weekly news conference that A.J. Cann, as much as I've ever heard him, made a pretty impassioned plea to run the ball. He's not a guy who's going to come out and buck the party line in any way. But he said 2 or 3 times things that I took to mean, boy, we really feel better when we run the ball a lot. So I would expect some of that. I say I would expect with Steve Spurrier. I'm just not sure. But you would expect them to run the ball. They had a lot of success doing it early against Kentucky. So we'll see if you get more ground game against a Furman team that you ought to be able to really just mash. So we talked about what the Gamecocks want to do better. Furman has got their own issues. Coming in here off of 4 losses, what did the Paladins bring to Williams-Brice?
Well, Josh, they started the season pretty well. They won their first 2 games, and, they've played some good games. They lost in double overtime to a very good Coastal Carolina program, but they also lost to Presbyterian. They lost to Gardner-Webb, and, they're 2-4 and just, really kind of limping coming into this now. They have had a bye week just like the Gamecocks have, but we'll see how much that has. It seems to be kind of a transition year for Bruce Fowler and his team. Had a real good season last year. They're kind of taking their lumps this year, but they do play pretty good defense. They're only giving up about 20 points a game and just over 300 yards a game. Now, we all know that hasn't been against the greatest competition. They haven't faced an offense like South Carolina's going to throw at them. Then again, South Carolina's, particularly Dylan Thompson, has struggled a bit. But getting back to your other point, as long as you run the ball, you kind of take away that factor. So Furman, very good defensively. They have a linebacker named Gary Wilkins, has 4.5 sacks, 1 interception, and 2 forced fumbles, which no matter what level you're playing on, that's very, very good. And offensively, I can't wait to see a guy they got, just a great name, P.J. Blazahowski. Or Blazajowski. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name there, PJ, but just a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He's averaging nearly 70 yards rushing a game, and he also checks in at quarterback, got about 100 yards passing a game. So I'm hoping to see PJ Blaze get to be able to play against South Carolina this Saturday.
A lot of Wildcats.
Oh, yeah, they will run a lot of Wildcat. Furman will run a lot of different looks at South Carolina's defense, and honestly, USC's defense just got to prove it can stop somebody. Make a tackle, fill a gap, just do something. But it is Furman. It's an FCS opponent. While these teams have played USC tough in the past, a lot of the teams that have played them the toughest have been the Woffords, the Citadels that run the triple option and run those very specialized offenses. Furman doesn't do that. And while Furman did make it a very close game last time they played here in 2010, it ended up being 38-19. It was close when it was 31-19, so a little close, but not that close. And then Stephon Gilmore had an 80-yard pick 6. But we'll see how it goes down at high noon on Saturday. Watch out for that fair traffic. Now it's time for our Village Idiot Mailbag. We appreciate you all chiming in with some questions for us this week. First question we have is from Danny Bagley. And he says, why does Coach Spurrier abandon the run game? We've allowed 2 weaker opponents to come back because of it. Danny, I feel your pain, my man. I do, because I've said the exact same thing these past 2 games. And don't get me wrong, the losses are in no way all Spurrier's fault and because he wouldn't commit to the run. It's defense's fault.
Right.
You know, I mean, if we're going percentages here, I'd say 90-10. But Steve Spurrier needed to realize that the running game was working, that was the only way to keep that defense off the field, and that the biggest enemy was the clock, and to keep running that clock, particularly against Kentucky when they were just churning up yards. You know, I don't have an answer for why he didn't. He has been very, apologetic about the Kentucky game, saying on that 3rd and 3 before Kentucky's final possession where they tied the score,
right,
they should have just run it twice and seen where they were. But they didn't, and hindsight's always 20/20. Hopefully there has been, the light has come on. He said, if it's working, we're going to keep doing it. Daniel Kimmerlin writes in and says, why isn't Shamir Jeffrey playing? Well, Daniel, Shamir is playing. He's playing a little bit special teams. He's getting in there on some wide receiver rotations, has not caught the ball yet. And a lot of that's because the games haven't been close enough to where they feel that they can start throwing the ball to really a 2nd or 3rd option at receiver when they still have their guys out there, Nick Jones and Demir Bird and Pharaoh Cooper, to get out there and really catch that ball. They have to go out there and make sure that they're going to have a play on that's going to work. And you got to go with your most trusted guys, the guys that have proven it the most recently. And Shamir Jeffrey hasn't done that. He is continued to be mentioned in a lot of press conferences and things like that. So I'm sure he'll get on the field, and hopefully he gets a chance this Saturday. Josh, what questions did you get this week?
Donna Robinson, is Spurrier thinking of using the other 2 quarterbacks? I think he is.
Popular question.
Finally he is. Obviously it's got something to do with when you're coming into a Furman game, you've got to, with at least part of your brain, plan, okay, if we get out to a big lead like we should, who do we want to take a look at? And I think backup quarterback is somebody you want to take a look at. But I think they want to get somebody in the game a little earlier than that even, just to break things up, just to try to, stimulate. Dylan Thompson's in no danger of losing his job, I don't believe. But, I mean, get a different look out there, see what you got. So I would expect,
especially for next year.
Yeah, I would expect Connor Mitch to be the first guy. If it's Perry Orth, I won't be stunned. I would think by the end of the game we'll see them both, and South Carolina fans will have something to chew on, as you say, for next year, and start looking ahead to say, all right, what did I like about that guy? What did I like about that guy? Richard Taylor brings up an interesting question. What happens when? Now Richard says when. I'm not sure I'm ready to go when. Richard says, what happens when Connor Mitch or Perry Orth is better than Dylan Thompson? What happens then? David, what do you think?
Well, Richard, of course, that's always a possibility, but I don't think you're going to be able to judge anything off of just this game.
Right.
I mean, it's Furman. It's an FCS opponent, and who knows what happens. Maybe this game turns out like the Coastal game last year where USC's up 5 touchdowns in the middle of the 2nd, and Coastal says, we're done here. We're going to go and prepare for our playoffs. And USC said, yeah, okay, no problem. Thanks for playing, and rolling in a lot of the backups. I don't think you're going to be able to judge anything about Connor Mitch or Perry Orth just from this game. If they do look better than Dylan Thompson, more power to them. But you're really going to have to wait and see how they play against an SEC opponent or against a Clemson to really judge that.
John Miller, what are our chances of running the table and finishing the regular season 9-3? If we finish 5-3 in the East, will that get us to the SEC East title game in Atlanta? I'll go backward here. If you finish 5-3 in the East, absolutely, I think that's a possibility for Atlanta.
As long as Georgia keeps winning.
Yeah, and I think Georgia's got their hands full with Arkansas. What you want is Georgia to lose to Arkansas and to Auburn, and then to beat the other teams in the East. And that's a very reasonable scenario in my mind as we sit here. The hard part of it is South Carolina holding up there into the bargain, because that means winning on the road at Auburn. Tennessee, I feel like you probably feel like that's a win. At Florida,
who knows?
At anybody in the SEC is a crapshoot, I think, for this team the way it's playing right now. So if South Carolina can win out, can finish 5-3 in the SEC East, yeah, I think they've got a decent shot. That's a big if, though.
Yeah. And our last question comes from Carla Kivlin, and she says, there's no signature win yet this season. Do you think Auburn will be that win? Well, Josh, I'll go ahead and take this first because you know my answer. Even in the preseason, I was saying they're not going to win at Auburn. And after South Carolina these last 2 games and Auburn coming off a loss in which, they got pretty popped,
right,
down there in Mississippi, they're not going to win at Auburn. Josh, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. For starters, I agree with you. I do think it's good to have that game out there, though, as a carrot.
Sure.
To say, for motivation-wise, just listen, guys, we might not have done what we want to do. We might not do what we want to do at the end of the season, but we'll have a chance against an elite-ish team. I'm not in love with Auburn this year, but an elite-ish team, the defending SEC champion, to really have a signature win and have something we can feel really good about. I think that's a motivation. That's a great motivational thing to have out there.
And plus, when you're looking for signature wins, Carla, you know how it is around here. As long as you win that one at the end, it's always going to be considered a good season. So we'll see what happens maybe in a couple of weeks, but definitely on November 29th. And now for our final segment here on the Village Idiot Preview Pizza Show, we've got our guest picker selection. Today we have Joey Bastido in here with us. Joey, welcome. How you doing, my man?
Good, doing well. How you guys doing?
No, not too bad. How's business been going these past couple weeks? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
It's doing pretty good, man. Students are back in full force, Not really looking forward to fall break here yet, but we'll see what happens.
Well, Joey, it was a rough couple of weeks for South Carolina against Missouri and at Kentucky. They've had the bye week now. They're coming home to play a Furman team, which a lot of people think that they should overwhelm. What do you think is going to happen this Saturday, and what do you think the final score will be?
Well, I think on the plus side is, Furman's been having trouble scoring lately. They've only scored more than, 17 points twice this season, and it took them double overtime last week to get there. So I feel like even though we've been struggling on defense, if we put up, a couple good early scores, put them into comeback mode, they're going to struggle, try to force passes all day. I'm looking at, 45-10 for the final score on this one.
South Carolina, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Josh, what do you think? I mean, like Joey said, Furman's a team that's lost 4 straight, and they've really kind of struggled. So
South Carolina's a 39-point favorite. I think Steve Spurrier will try to cover it because it will make him feel better about his club. I'm not sure he'll get there. I'm thinking about a 52-17.
Half 100.
I think the defensively, if not score, will set up a few quick scores. I think that South Carolina's going to have a lot of points. I think that Steve Spurrier will not call off the Dogs. He's never been one much to call off the Dogs. Coming off of 2 losses, a team that needs confidence. I don't think he will this time. 52-17.
Yeah, Josh, I got to agree with you and Joy. I mean, this is a chance for everybody to feel better, feel real good about themselves. And, you can put the asterisk, well, it's Furman, but hey, this team desperately needs some feel good. And as you mentioned, Spurrier's not going to call off the Dogs, and it's not a mean thing. It's like, well, we're giving you a paycheck for it, so we might as well see what our team has. So I'm going to go a little more conservative. I'm going to say 45-20. Gamecocks, but I don't think this will be a reason to sweat. USC will get up early. Hopefully, they'll work out all their kinks on offense and defense and really improve to 4-3 and get ready for the Auburn trip. We thank you for joining us here on the Village Idiot Preview Show. Josh, any final thoughts?
We're just going to have to get up early and get there at noon. This is going to be a rude awakening for the beat writers, at least. I don't know about the players.
And one thing, if you do have a Furman ticket, I think you can get in the State Fair beginning at 10 a.m. for free. So go get yourself an elephant ear and a corn dog, and then come on over and join us at Williams Price. We'll see you there.